Thank you for joining us. I'm Gord Long. I have with me today Mish Shedlock of Sitka Pacific Capital, but probably best known for his extremely well-followed website, mishtalk.com. Welcome back, Mish.
Pleasure to be back on the show, Gordon.
Quickly, the months go by. Mish, I'm going to jump right in because we always run out of time here. What should our listeners or viewers be following today? What do you think the important macro subject is this week?
What the central banks are doing, more importantly, whether or not there's faith in central banks. I had actually one of my favorite posts. It was from a presentation that I did in June to a group called the Venture Alliance. And I talked about various measures of sentiment, Bitcoin a little bit. I had 6 slides out of my 38 slides are on gold. And I actually posted the entire thing on my blog, so you can post it when you post the website as well. It's a PowerPoint presentation of about 38 slides. And the piece on gold I really like. I gave a timeline of gold since about 1980, and it fell from 850 all the way down to 250 in what was called Brown's bottom after Gordon Brown, then the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who decided to diversify out of gold into currencies, marking the bottom, and it's become known as Brown's bottom. That was the best time since 2000 to buy gold. One could have got it around $250 an ounce. So and for all the consternation over gold, what, 250, 500, 750, 1,000, 1,250? How many times up is that? So gold's actually done quite well, even though it's now out of favor. And gold tends to come in and out of favor in accordance with whether or not people have faith in central banks. And I took people through that timeline under Volcker, who raised interest rates all the way to the record highs we've ever seen in the U.S. It squashed inflation. Greenspan took over. We had something called the Great Moderation. As the Great Moderation, I don't know why it got that name. And Greenspan himself was referred to as the Maestro. All of this represented a period of disinflation, and by disinflation I mean a falling rate, but a positive rate of inflation, as measured by the CPI, not by money supply, not by asset bubbles, not by any of these other measures that would seem to make more sense. Gold tends to do very poorly in such an environment. Along came the dot-com bubble, the dot-com bust, the housing bubble. Gold took off, pretty much never looked back until we had a European crisis in Europe. Mario Draghi came out and said, we will do whatever it takes to save the euro, and believe me, it will be enough. Gold peaked right about that time and fell from 1,900 or so all the way down close to $1,000. It's now back up to about 1,250. So now we see debate within the Fed itself whether or not they're behind the curve, ahead of the curve, whether or not they should be hiking, whether or not they should be pursuing higher rates of inflation, even though they can't hit by their own measure the 2% CPI. Of course, all the meantime, they've blown these asset bubbles, and those things are going to pop. And it's when faith in the central banks started to again come into question. What are they doing? Is everything really under control? That gold found its footing. So it's best to see gold in view of of not routine inflation, because gold tends to do very poorly in those things with a falling rate of inflation. We are on the border here now. One more downturn will turn this into outright deflation, at least as measured by the CPI. But more importantly, asset bubbles will pop.
I've got a study here that shows that no country that has a 2% inflation targeting has even been able to come close, and the average is down is below it. So, and this is after them doing everything possible. We have inflation in some areas. We have inflation in some areas, but clearly we have deflation here, and it's a increasingly looming problem.
It is, because the real problem, Gordon, is banks make loans based on assets, based on property values, based on the value of business, based on the expectations that a business will succeed. And when asset bubbles pop, none of those things happen. The reverse of those things all happen. And so the balance, the value of these loans on the books, balance sheets of banks, when asset bubbles pop and people start defaulting on their loans and the bank is stuck with properties. Does that ring a bell? This is exactly what happened in 2007. I expect something similar to happen here. I think it'll be worse in Europe.
Interesting that you think it'll be worse in Europe. Switching gears, because I want to cover a number of subjects here. Mish, you've been doing a lot of writing on the retail sector, specifically the auto, moving to electric cars, driverless cars. Comments on what you think's in front of us in the auto industry, and then maybe the retail industry overall.
Sure. Let me tie up a loose end first. The reason why I think Europe will do worse is its banks are in worse shape. The Fed under Bernanke and Yellen instituted a policy of paying interest on reserves. Banks have collected tens and tens of billions of dollars. Bernanke did a better job, if you would call it that, of bailing out the banks in the United States than ECB President Mario Draghi. Italy is a basket case. Its bank system is totally insolvent. It's only a matter of time. We realize that. All the banks are in trouble, but the Italian banks are in as bad a shape as any of the banks. That's the reason why I think the crisis will hit worse in Europe than it does here. In terms of retail sector, we see retail spending barely holding its own, if you believe it is. My forecast and that of Pat Higgins at the Atlanta Fed with his GDP Now model. By the way, I've had some interesting conversations with him regarding that. This stuff is quite complicated. I thought about putting together my own model and quickly gave up all the components that go into this. So people can criticize this model. I've mocked it at times, but I also want to praise Pat Higgins for putting his model out there, explaining it, what it does, what it is, how it works. I've learned a lot from Pat Higgins at the Atlanta Fed, and so a tip of the hat to him. But retail sales have been at best holding steady. Car sales account for about 20% of retail sales. They've been in the gutter. Car inventories are rising. So at a time when consumer interest is waning, something has to give. I question the value of the inventories that's stacking up on all these dealers. Of course, we do not know how the BEA is going to factor in a change in private inventories on these components with prices coming down and inventories rising for no reason. It doesn't look good, even if the next quarter somehow they claim spending is up when it isn't, and inventories are up when the value of them is falling. And the estimates for second quarter GDP keep declining. The Atlanta Fed model is down from 4.2%. I think the latest is 2.5% now. I think they're too high. The New York Fed, well, I didn't see its report. It came out today, but a week ago was like 1.9%. I'm looking at like 1% based off of retail sales, based off of construction spending, based off of balance of trade. The numbers, latest numbers there, Gordon, have been pretty bad to say the least. Quarter over quarter, imports are up, exports are down, export prices are down. No one expected that. Agricultural prices are falling. It's one of our key exports. So I'm looking at a soft second quarter here. If it comes in a little bit stronger, well, the third quarter is going to be that much weaker than Gordon, in my estimation.
You know, the auto, we have a third of all cars have been sold on leases. So we have them now coming back off leases. This is something that's been going on for 3 or 4 years, abnormally high to justify increased prices in new cars. But we have 3 million coming back this year, 4 million for each of the next 3 years. They're forecasting inventory or car sales going from just under 18 million on an annualized basis down to 15.5 million. Some Edmondson have it even lower. My concern is the residual values of these returning lease cars. Somebody's on the hook big time.
Oh, absolutely. And the residual values of these cars is poised to plunge in the next few years because of autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles. Even if we don't get to that full state, I think we're going to get there sooner than most. Even if we don't, people are going to want those features in their cars. The residual values of those cars is going to plunge. We're seeing a small, in the United States, push away from gas-powered to electric. In Europe, that's going to pick up much, much faster. Governments are simply demanding it. And California may be demanding it here too, soon in the United States. And other states are going to have to follow what California does. We don't produce one set of vehicles here, or it's more difficult and more costly if we want to try to produce one set of vehicles for California and another set for the rest of the country.
When you look at across the country what the average normal worker was 15 years ago, and then look at what it is today, and I have grids on that. Today it shows truck driver or driver being the dominant profession in the vast majority of states. Whether they're long haul, whether they're couriers, whether they're bus drivers, whatever. What does this mean for employment when we get to wireless, or rather self-driving vehicles? Because clearly it's coming and coming fast.
It is. I have my readers challenge me on this all the time. I've made statements repeatedly over the past few years that millions of jobs will vanish, and one person challenged me on that and said, "My gosh, miss, how can millions vanish when there's only 1.7 million long-haul truck jobs?" Well, it's not just long-haul trucks. There's another 1.7 taxis. I don't know how many short-haul truck drivers there are, but you have to factor those in. No, they're not all going to vanish at once, but long haul will vanish a big way, in a big bang, all at once. But think about all of the related industries. If you don't have a guy driving a truck, you don't have a truck driver stopping for meals at truck stops. You don't have, if we switch from diesel to electric, which I think is likely to happen in trucks, maybe perhaps even first. We have reduced maintenance. We have less hauling of diesel. We have less production of diesel. More importantly, on the car side, when it comes to cities, I think car ownership is going to come into question. People are going to be people who seldom get out of cities are not going to need to own their own car. So that's less car production. That's less imports production. That's parts production. I meant to say that's less gasoline sales here when we have the ramp up towards electric. Think about insurance. Congress is toying with a bill right now. I expect it will pass this year to define some of these things at a national level. The Congress is just now catching up to where cars are, but there's going to be fewer accidents. We're going to need fewer claims insurance people. The whole insurance industry is going to face a massive auto insurance industry is going to face massive consolidation with fewer accidents and more things like national laws on who's at fault. So we get to know fault, especially if the car manufacturers themselves are somehow liable for this or share in a portion of this. All of these insurance-related jobs go away. It's if you add up all of the individual components, it's well into the millions easily.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there, Mish. I don't know what people are using for their numbers. I mean, I heard what you cited. What does the possibility of Amazon Prime, what they're doing with air cargo, but they're killing retail, as we all know, bricks and mortar. But they're not in this next day service, next day delivery. They're trying to move to same day delivery, whether it's going to be drones. They've got all sorts, and they have the financial muscle to bring this to market very quickly. Is there a real threat there looming?
Oh, absolutely, and that's something I failed to point out in my post. When we get drone delivery, that's going to take off the need for some UPS trucks, for example. So that's coming. What time frame that will happen, I don't know, but it's all part of the one big picture here of everywhere you look. There's reasons to see how disruptive this is all going to be. And a lot of good is going to come out of it. There's going to be some new jobs come out of this for sure. They're going to be different jobs. There's going to be someone, perhaps jobs monitoring these fleets of driverless vehicles, especially trucks, to see where they are, where they're going. Can they do things any different? Can we pick up any efficiencies there? For a while, cities and states and the federal government might have to put transmitters, at various mile markers on the highway, so trucks know where they are. So that'll take some time, some effort, and that'll create some jobs. That one will be temporary for a while until all of this kind of stuff gets done. So there's going to be winners and losers in all of this, but the big winner is the consumer, because prices of shipping of goods. Transportation costs are going to drop. It's going to make things cheaper and better, and the Fed's going to be fighting this, and we're going to see a productivity improvement for sure when we get rid of when all these truck drivers are replaced essentially by nothing. So I've commented many times, the Fed is worried about productivity. I'm not so certain they're going to be happy when the next round of productivity, not just with cars, but increasingly in supermarkets, self-checkout, all these things, a major disruptive force is happening on multiple fronts all at once, and the net effect is, at least for a while, it's going to cost jobs.
Big time. The advances in robotics, and sometimes you can be misled with the word robotics, in retail is a tsunami wave that's coming. Whether it's kiosks, automatic checking, even scanning in the stores for how you check out is all in the process of changing. You're already seeing it in many of the fast foods, McDonald's burgers, machines, etc. It's all because it's cheaper. The $13 an hour is like just made a trip for a trip signal to a lot of these places. But just one point I'd make, Mish, we talk about these drones at Amazon. It sounds like a little, way out there in the future. It's not. And where they'll be running fleets of a control center where some drone pilots, and they don't fly them one at a time. They pick up the item, and they've already got this working. They put in the GPS coordinates The drone takes it to the GPS coordinates, hovers 200 feet or 400 feet up. Then the pilot comes to that particular screen, drops it on the step, hits the GPS return coordinates, and goes to the next drone that he has. They can manage 30, 50, 60 drones at a time quite easily because they just hover until they're ready to land them. And that's the mechanics that they're working on. Just think, now it's same-day delivery. It's completely removed shipping costs completely. That is devastating. Just as a point, it's coming. That's a fact.
It is. Yeah, we can debate the timeline, Gordon. The amazing thing to me is I have readers who don't think this is coming, or they think it's decades away, if ever. You know, it's crazy. This is going to be here within the next 4 years. Some of this stuff, perhaps not drones, but self-driving trucks on interstates. 4 years, almost for certain now.
It'll impact retail, commercial real estate also, as the bricks and mortars are still going to be around but challenged. And I'm seeing more and more, you know, we're going to have close to 10,000 chain store locations planned on being closed this year. 8,800 was the last number. It'll be over 10,000. It's just every day you turn around. As the mall, the department store, anchor store model is broken, as the whole mall concept is fading very quickly. There'll still be malls, but a third of them will be gone within 4 years. Some may even have shorter notices on that. But switching, any comments there before I switch subjects on you, Mish?
I don't know about a third in 4 years, but
there's about 1,300 malls. The consultants range from 310 to 400 that will close. I don't know how many studies I've read on it. Consultants are always wrong, but it's somewhere in that range. So maybe it's 25%. I don't know. They're already shutting down.
The time frame is probably a little too fast. But yeah, that's what we're arguing about here, not whether it's going to happen. We're arguing about how realistic the time frame.
I know I'm talking to commercial real estate people, and they're all into the repurposing game right now, trying to figure out how to repurpose these malls because it's a real dollar per square footage problem. Retail pays up. It's a high premium kind of square footage sale. Whereas anything else, where you move to schools, government, it drops dramatically.
And we have a lot of commercial real estate loans on the books of banks for companies that are going to go out of business. If that timeline is correct, we're looking at another major deflationary shock here when some of these commercial real estate loans start defaulting.
We have $13 trillion in commercial real estate. Even if it starts to edge off 2, 3, 4, 5%, that's a massive hit. And it's so highly leveraged. I'm not saying it's imminent, but it'll start in the retail, commercial. The ground floors of most of these buildings, even in the cities, urban areas, you know, are all retail. That's where they make a lot of their money. Above it, there may be apartments, there may be offices. But as soon as that retail space falls, the value of the building falls. And suddenly the refinancing gets more difficult, right? It's the old more money down, and when you're highly leveraged, that's problematic. We've heard this before, so nothing new there. It's not imminent, but I'm already personally seeing cracks in it. Other cracks, we talk about this every time we talk, but I always like update state and local government. Illinois, pension systems. You've been doing a lot of writing on a number of these areas. Comments there?
Well, they passed Illinois passed a budget. It's not balanced, even though the Constitution requires it to be balanced. The 4 out of the last 7 governors in Illinois have ended up in prison over various fraudulent activities. So Illinois is clearly one of the worst states in the union, and its pension system. And the weird thing is, the way they passed this budget to get it to work, guess what they did? I don't know if you heard this yet, but they're going to these pension funds are already only 40% funded. They're going to suspend payments to the pension funds. Illinois is doomed to have some of these pensions go broke in a 2021 timeframe, and if the stock market takes a huge hit, it can happen before that.
Mish, what happens if a recession actually ever occurs in the United States? You know, we're in 8 years without one now. It's usually 5 to 7 years. The longest we've ever went with 10 years. I don't think the central banks have reversed or can stop the normal business cycle. I've seen cracks in the credit cycle. What happens if we have a recession in the United States? Whenever.
Well, I mean, all these things. I think the pension bust is going to be the biggest one. The ramifications of that, of a pension bust, that's on the assumption that the stock market's going to go down in a recession, a normal state of affairs, is going to be the biggest fallout. Our budget deficit, which had recovered down to only, what are we running here now, 600 or 700 billion in the hole, but it's been going up this year as tax revenues haven't been coming in. That rate's to go back over $1 trillion. You know, this whole reflation of idea with Trump is all nothing but a bunch of hot air. And today he was bragging about manufacturing sentiment. Good grief. The look ahead manufacturing sentiment is one of the biggest freaking contrarian indicators there is, and the only time you can pay any semblance to it is when it finally turns negative at the bottom of recessions, when the manufacturers give up and think conditions are actually going to get worse, after falling for months or years. That's actually when the bottom hits. We're a long way off from that. Trump, the sentiment indicator, the look-ahead sentiment indicator, and Trump bragging about it are two huge contrarian indicators. Already we're seeing manufacturing falter because of autos. We had an unexpected slowdown in the Philadelphia Fed, and people have been wondering, the economists have been wondering, and Econo Day in particular, good grief, it's the number of inane comments coming out from these guys, and the amount of people who actually believe these anecdotal reports of these diffusion indices rather than actual real production is amazing. But we saw an outright plunge in new orders at the Philly Fed and Econo Day, who right ahead of the forecast. This is funny. They were worried about the Philly Fed region overheating, and then when the survey results got posted, they, instead of worrying about overheating, the word they used was there's some cracks in manufacturing. Yes, there are. The diffusion indices held up, and what I suspect it was a number of small firms were improving at the end of the cycle here, picking up new orders, and the way these diffusion indices work is a big firm, a small firm have equal weight. GM and Joe's Mechanics, if he's in the survey, have equal weight. If Joe's Mechanic is hiring 3 workers and GM is firing 1,000, or vice versa, the diffusion index calls that a thing of break even. There's nothing like Joe's in these indices. It's bigger indices. It's bigger corporations, of course. But that's the point I'm trying to make here. Is that a company of 100 workers or 200 workers or 400, it counts just as much as a corporation that employs thousands and thousands of people. The same thing holds true in the service sector on these service diffusion indices. Walmart counts 1. Some real tiny service companies count as 1. So what we're seeing is skew that somehow says things are okay, when we can look and we can say, actual manufacturing output is not keeping up. Which one do you believe? I believe the actual output, not diffusion indices that tell us things are getting better.
Last subject, Mish, and you mentioned tax revenues are falling. There's a number of reasons why that can be. I think some games with expecting tax cuts and deferrals, but tax revenues are coming down at the federal, the state, maybe not at the local level, but we have a tax ceiling problem in front of us in Congress to approve that. We got infighting within the Republican parties on whether that should be. I'm sure the Democrats are going to have their voice to be said here. And Trump's going to bring forward tax cuts. And that's the whole basis of the excitement, or a big part of the euphoria in the market that built the Trump rally, that and deregulations and being pro-business. Is that going to happen?
Well, first off, he's not pro-business, at least on the line along the lines of tariffs. Tariffs are one of the dumbest things we can do. He flips-flops so much on all of his statements, we really don't know what he's going to do until he actually does it. So far, he's failed on everything he's wanted to do. Repeal Obamacare, put up a wall. Fortunately, he's failed on NAFTA, but we don't know what's coming. He's threatened China. He's threatened Germany. We throw a global trade war in on all this. It's going to exacerbate greatly any of the problems we have in the next recession. It could conceivably even cause a recession if although one's baked in the cake anyway, but it could speed up the timeline, not cause it. So all these factors here are at play, yet the stock market is still acting as if the reflation trade is on. Go figure. It's still, so far all you can say is we've got an excess of liquidity. I don't know what it takes to crack it. I suspect it will take a disruption in the bond market, and by that I don't mean the treasury market. I mean the corporate bond market. We've got all these covenant light loans out there. Junk bonds issuance is absolutely massive. These trouble usually starts at the periphery, and one easy place where it might start, well, we've named two of them, is the corporate bond market and the real estate market, commercial real estate market.
Anything we haven't touched on that you want to mention here in closing, Mish?
No, I think that's it. Post some more of my photos and mention my photography blog again. So my economic blog is mishtalk.com. My photography blog is Mish Moments. I'm still on Zion. Pretty soon I'm going to move forward, perhaps on a Death Valley or the International Crane Foundation or maybe something from Europe. Got a lot of pictures stacked up, so I'm learning some new techniques, I can't wait to particularly try out some more night photography. Very difficult to do around the Chicago area. Light pollution here is miserable. No place in the Midwest is particularly good for light pollution. I'm too far away from the desert to be getting a lot of night photography. But I do have some coming up. I'm going to the Badlands in September, and I'm looking forward to that trip.
Always enjoy posting the pictures, Mish. It's first rate. I really enjoy your site. Extend an invitation to everybody who's listening to go to the site. It's just a great piece of photography. We'll talk to you again next month.
We will catch you in a month.
Thanks, Mish. Talk to you then.